some hot takes that I've known you for a while, so I know some hot takes that you have. One of them, I believe, is that Derek Jeter was one of the worst defensive shortstops in history. Is that still one of your takes?
It is still one of my takes. It is definitively not hot. It's not an opinion.
It's not an opinion.
It's a statement of fact. Derek Jeter was an abhorrent shortstop.
Can you unpack it?
Yeah. So he's very misremembered, despite the fact that he was the most seen baseball player of his generation. He's very misremembered. Derek Jeter is one of the greatest hitters of all time. Derek Jeter is one of the best base runners of all time. I mean, there aren't 2 dozen players in the history of baseball that I would say definitively have a better, more well-rounded offensive profile than Derek Jeter. I mean, there's like 5 guys in history with more hits than him. He stole 300 bases. He ran them efficiently. I mean, he was a phenomenal offensive player and a driving force behind his team winning 5 championships. He's definitively a top 50 player of all time. He is as clutch, literally, as anyone ever. And that's someone coming from someone that doesn't even really believe in all the abstract nature of clutch, but all you have to do is watch him play in the playoffs. All you have to do is look at his baseball reference page. He was a metronome in the playoffs. He was a brilliant hitter in the playoffs. But Derek Jeter was an abhorrent defender at shortstop, and this is not my opinion. It's a statement of fact. In fact, I would love to not have to be the guy that says these things every once in a while, because it so angers Yankees fans that have grown to adore him, and for good reason. But this is not something for which there is a good faith argument to the contrary. Derek Jeter was not a shortstop, and the case against him is airtight. So we only really have a super modern way of measuring infield defense since something like 2003. That was the implementation of defensive runs saved. It's a very sturdy metric that holds up very well, goes into everyone's WAR component now in determining how good or bad you were at playing defense. And it also, of course, adjusts based upon the position at which you played for your WAR. But in Derek Jeter's case, he only ever played shortstop. Before 2003, and going back literally as far as we've ever played baseball, there are very astute ways of measuring how good you were based upon chances that you had and putouts and assists that you accrued. So it's a little bit more rudimentary, but it's done in a standardized fashion across the history of baseball. So you're comparing apples to apples.
Pre-2003.
As intelligently as you can, truthfully. They're done excellently. And I say this as someone who has been somewhat skeptical of them in the past, but I can fairly definitively say that if you look at the leaderboards for the greatest defenders of all time before 2003, it's all the people that you would expect. It's Brooks Robinson and Ozzie Smith and Roberto Clemente and Mark Belanger and Willie Mays and Andruw Jones and people like that. I mean, it's those people. It's the people that you know are the greatest defenders ever. So if that's the case, why would it not be true also if you look at those same leaderboards and see the worst defenders ever on the same ones and conclude that the list is correct on both ends of the extreme? Derek Jeter's on those lists, definitively, on all those lists.
2003.
Even if you look at his numbers from 2003 on, which is when he was past his prime as a defender, they're terrible. They're absolutely wretched. Even if you look at his stuff from when he debuted through 2002 or from 2003 on, they tell the same story. Derek Jeter was a bad shortstop.
Explain the defensive run saved.
Defensive run saved is a number for which a fielder will be rewarded or penalized, credited or debited, with a player opportunity that he does or doesn't make. And it's very standardized across the board using both the tracking metrics and also a number of people doing video analysis that tag as many as 30 outputs on every single play for the last 22 years. It could not be more scientific. It could not be more airtight. So if you think WAR is of reasonable, worthwhile statistic, and you don't like defensive run saved, well, you have to choose one because it's so airtight now that teams use it in determining how much money a player should be paid. Defensive run save is a very durable, excellent, tried and true metric to determine how good or bad a player was playing defense. And Derek Jeter very consistently grades very unfavorably, but you don't even necessarily have to just use one metric to prove it. So Baseball Reference has a slightly different outcome than Fangraphs, which has a slightly different outcome from Baseball Prospectus. So if you just look at each of those 3 companies that do this modeling that every single front office in baseball adheres to, that we use for how valuable a player was throughout the course of their careers, which winds up going into legitimate Hall of Fame arguments. We're talking about airtight stuff, truthfully. According to Baseball Reference, Derek Jeter cost his team something like 250 runs with his glove playing defense at shortstop. Fangraphs says that number is closer to 150. So they were a little bit kinder to Derek Jeter, but it's still a really loud, ugly number. And Baseball Prospectus says he cost his team like 300 runs. Derek Jeter, over the course of his career, cost his team something between 15 and 30 wins merely because he was his team's shortstop. Now, Derek Jeter more than outweighed all of that with his preposterous hitting and preposterous base running. Derek Jeter is one of the 24 greatest offensive performers, at least in recent history. He was a phenomenal offensive player. But Derek Jeter doesn't get credit, in my judgment, because of the numbers that I just spouted, for being one of the great shortstops of all time. He wasn't actually a shortstop, Dave. He just played there. And he just played there as unsuccessfully as any high-volume shortstop in the history of baseball. And some people would point to the fact that, look, it didn't prevent the Yankees from doing any winning because they won 5 championships during that time. But they stopped doing that winning at such a time when Derek Jeter fell off so much defensively that you can craft a good faith argument that he prevented them from doing more winning once you got to 2000 in a very articulate manner. Derek Jeter cost his team with his glove so many runs. And if you look at certain postseason series and decide to dig into it more granularly, it gets uglier and uglier as you look.
So is there an argument to be made that if you made that argument about that he cost them potentially some more World Series because of his defensive play at shortstop in the 2000s and beyond, right? With that argument, wouldn't the opposite side of that argument be true that because of his play at shortstop, is they won the first 4 titles that they did win, and was pre the defense, the RSA, the RS can't be necessarily factored in. His error rate was obviously low. He was very, very low in those early years.
That's not horrible,
right?
It was a negative, but not unplayable. Negative.
Very consistent. Very consistent. I mean, his fielding percentage very. I mean, there was little variation to it.
Yeah, but that's a dumb
on it.
It's a test. The percentage is dumb as that.
Okay, explain why.
Because it takes into account things that we now know are much too finite to use it biblically.
Like range.
Range is the most important attribute that any infielder has, and it's not close. Derek Jeter had consistently good fielding percentages because he didn't get to anything. Passive Diving Jeter was the name of a blog, very hilariously. Derek Jeter made the routine play, and every once in a while, a flashy one. But Derek Jeter had about as limited a range as anyone that's ever played that position consistently. But parenthetically, Corey Posada, who caught for that team, and Bernie Williams played center for that team, also graded out very unfavorably. This is less a commentary on exactly what Derek Jeter was or wasn't doing on defense, and more commentary on how important defense actually is. I don't believe defense historically is necessarily appreciated for what it actually represents in terms of winning impact. It's even less important now than it was when Derek Jeter was playing. But the fact that they had a value negative catcher, shortstop, and center fielder on a dynasty, what does that tell us about how much defense actually matters? If you can bang, if you can have a 115 OPS plus as a team, if you can really pitch, if you're the best closer of all time, that matters a lot more than being able to catch it. Because chances obviously vacillate from team to team too. Across Major League Baseball right now, there are going to be something like 15,000 fewer chances for fielders to make this year than there were 20 years ago. 15,000. So that's 500 per team a season. That's 3 per game. So you watch a baseball game right now, there are going to be 3 fewer chances for your fielders than there would be 20 years ago, and multiply that by 162. Defense isn't as important as it used to be. It even used to not matter as much as we thought it did. The notion of the 5-tool player or the 5-tool team is a cool axiom, but it's not that impactful when it comes to winning baseball. The most impactful thing you can do on a baseball field is hit and pitch. The things that go beyond that, the ancillary skills, where you play matters, but how well you play it only matters insofar as you clearing a certain threshold or prerequisite to be able to stay there. Derek Jeter definitively did not clear it. He won 5 championships anyway. And so what Derek Jeter was able to do in his career, again, in the batter's box and on the base pass, unassailable. But the notion that he being a bad defender at shortstop is a hot take is definitively not true, because he just wasn't. Regardless of how you want to...
Genuine question. Sure. The defensive runs saved, does it? Because that does account for the range, obviously, of not getting to balls, right? Yeah, that's why it's such a kind of a cool stat. Yeah. Does it take into account getting to a ball, but then the probability of making an error once you get to a ball? Yes, it does. It takes that into account, because a lot of guys I put guys with some phenomenal range. Those guys tend to make more errors obviously, because they're getting to a ball that no one else would get to. They're getting the ball behind second base. They're doing a spin play, and then they're trying to make a throw, and they're throwing the ball away. And with defense, obviously, it's a two-part play. So it's not only getting to the ball to make the catch. You have to make a throw. And 30 to 40% of errors, all errors are throws, right? So especially when you're at the maximum of your range, that probability goes up even more.
And you just demonstrated why fielding percentage doesn't matter. You just answered your own question because you just used the example.
Well, so here would be my point to that. Yeah, well, let's just say the throw part of the error, right? 40% actually of throwing errors result in the base runner advancing.
Gotcha.
Right?
They advanced that.
So would there be an argument to be made that Derek Jeter not getting to base hits up the middle that maybe another player would get to, potentially making an error, and then 34% of those errors resulting in that player getting to second base is actually a positive?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. There is plenty of knowledge you're
But I'm trying.
and you're asking the kinds of questions that Yankees fans had asked and making the points the Yankee fans have posited for 20 or 30 years. And if I were a fan of the Yankees, I would feel the exact same way that they do, and I'd be asking the same questions that you were asking. Because how do I square the circle of this guy is my favorite player ever? I saw him become Mr. November. I saw him make the jump throws and the running into the stands catch and all the things that Derek Jeter did so well, so legendarily. For this guy to tell me now retroactively that he actually stunk there. It's a very hard square to circle. The thing is, we have the ability now mathematically and using the nuance that those numbers provide us to be able to differentiate, to separate. Derek Jeter was otherworldly at certain things and just awful at others. And that's the way that we are in any walk of life or any capacity. No one's positing that Gary Sheffield was a good outfielder just because he was a good hitter. He's one of the worst outfielders ever. But in the case of Derek Jeter, because he was Derek Jeter, he has to be good at everything. It's just not true.
Right.
It's just not true. We should have the ability to recognize both of these things as being true contrarily.
Well, an argument too with the jump throw is a lot of probably a result of the lack of range.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Why there's so many jump throws.
His iconic play, like his Jumpman, all right? Yeah. His Michael Jordan Jumpman is only a thing because he didn't get there because his right foot. And that's the thing that we're celebrating. So we should have the Jumpman logo with minus 250 defensive say.
If you enjoyed that clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the full podcast, click right here. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you find this content valuable.